Welcome to the Wednesday edition of Anglican Unscripted, where we talk about the tale of two states. I'm in the state of chaos with 4 feet of snow outside my door. George, what's the state of Florida like today?
Oh, it's beautiful. The sun's out, sky's blue, high 70s, low humidity, light breeze coming off the ocean. It's golfing weather,
It's
Kevin.
golfing weather in Florida.
Golfing, fishing, skiing, whatever you want to do. This message is brought to you by the Citrus County Chamber of Commerce.
I'm Kevin Carlson.
And I'm George Conger. Today's February 2015.
Welcome to the Wednesday edition of Anglican Unscripted. George, I can tell by looking, there's an extra light in your face here. You didn't buy curtains yet for the windows in your new office.
No, no, no. The nuclear Duke Energy's got that nuclear power plant up the coast, and every so often these bright lights go off in the sky, and so we all glow, have an inward glow here at this church.
So we're still working on George's new studio setup. He has a nice office down at this nice parish, but it's in Florida. And Florida, as we mentioned in the opening, is different than here in Connecticut, where the sun is so bright. You're just starting to tan on your right side. So hopefully in the next day or two, we'll get some curtains for George, and we'll have a more contained set and not so washed out. But George is not washed out in the theoretical sense. He's still a great reporter and a great priest. Let's move on to the
In
news.
fact, I'm between services. I haven't had time to take my cassock off. Surplus is to go down, but
You're ready to
busy,
go.
busy, busy.
Yes, it is. So there's lots to talk about in the news. We're trying to, what topic can we put into a nice 15-minute segment? And I guess the most notable one would be to talk about Michael Ingram's freedom of speech thing. But let's give a quick update on Bishop Cook in Maryland first before we go there. Bishop Cook, as if you haven't been watching the news since November, Bishop Cook, the new bishop of what type of bishop was she? Suffragan?
Suffragan Bishop of the Diocese of Maryland.
Has been arrested for a hit and run. She was given about a $2 or $3 million bail. She posted bail. She is now in some type of alcohol recovery program. She has not resigned as bishop, but Catherine Jefferts Schori has restricted her ministry in some way.
Yeah, and poor Bishop Cook, the poor whole episode, first time around her DUI in 2010, she got the lenient side of Maryland law. She got a $300 fine and a slap on the wrist. Now she is experiencing prosecutorial log rolling. She's just had another 10 charges, indictments added to her 4 charges already, I believe. And in other words, they're either too lenient or too hard. And in other words, they're now treating her like she's killed the Lindbergh baby or something. Now, yes, she did. If she did that, she's done something terrible. But now it's just pile on time for poor Bishop Cook.
It is, and I mean, one of the reasons they're piling on is because she is a bishop. There's nothing like making an example out of a Christian who's done something heinous and wrong, and I think that's what Maryland is out to do. I wonder, though.
And Gay Jennings, the president of the Episcopal Church's House of Bishops, has decided to take the ultimate step in the Episcopal system.
Oh,
She's appointing a committee to investigate this issue. Do we have a problem with alcohol in bishops and how we elect them? And a committee will resolve this answer. In the fullness of time,
yes.
we will find an answer.
So, obviously, this is a horrible situation. First and foremost for the family of the victim, a cyclist who was killed. Second, for how this makes the church look. The church is not being reflected well in this. There's kind of an interesting paradox. I wonder if the charges would have been lessened if she had resigned as a bishop and was just a normal citizen.
If she were a normal citizen the first time around, she would have lost her license. The second time around, she'd be looking at, a 3 or 4 year sentence. not a potential 20 to 25-year sentence.
Now, didn't
If
the
you don't go through
diocese,
with all these charges.
the diocese standing committee also called for her to step down, right?
Yeah, but it's just typical Episcopal nonsense. The Title IV proceedings, disciplinary proceedings have begun, and the standing committee knows that she cannot step down or call to step down while this takes place. So it's either ignorance or theater
Hmm.
on the part of the standing committee. She's got to stay in place while the process unfolds uh, in uh, in the ecclesiastical courts as well as the civil and criminal courts.
Okay, well, from the small state of Maryland, let's move to the large country of Canada, and we're going to talk about freedom of speech because Bishop Ingham, who I'm going to have George describe to you in a minute, gave his opinion on the freedom of speech, and kind of in regards to the Charlie magazine and all that went on in France a couple weeks ago. Here in America, we live under what's called the Bill of Rights. We have the freedom of speech, the freedom of assembly, freedom of religion, freedom of press, freedom to make money, freedom to lose money. We have many freedoms here in America. And
And for those who watch cable TV, there's also the freedom to be offensive, stupid, and ignorant.
yes, we have
Those are guaranteed rights. Now, we don't call it in those
no,
terms, but you have a right to be wrong.
yeah.
Uh,
Well,
it's,
there's that too, but there's the Brian Williams effect as well. You have the right to exaggerate until you're caught,
mhm.
or something like that.
Yes, you have the right to say that, but you must face the
That's
consequences for
right.
saying that. You have a right to tell a lie about somebody, but you will face slander charges.
Well,
You have a right to be offensive. You have a right to say something. So long as you don't yell fire in a crowded theater, you have a right to express yourself and not have the government decide what is good or bad speech. That's black letter American law. It's always been that way.
the Supreme Court has curtailed our freedom of speech to the one you referenced. You can't yell fire in a crowded theater. It makes sense. It causes panic. People could die. Freedom of speech has some, not many, limits. Now, we moved to Canada because we're going to be talking about a Canadian bishop. Canada has a much different freedom of speech laws. Yes, in principle, they had the freedom of speech, but the laws can be written to amend it so that people don't get hurt or offended. And just last week, a person was put in jail for 18 months for saying that Islam is evil. Something here we could do in America all day long, and there would be you would just be another guy who says Islam is evil. In some places in the world, that's called offensive speech, and you will go to jail with it. It's such that it's no different than communist Russia.
Absolutely. In other words, the idea that you can decide, you being the person in power, can decide what is wrong or right in terms of free speech is one our government and our founding fathers rejected utterly.
Mhm.
And we live in a society where we can have American Nazis sprayed through Skokie, Illinois, as a famous case from the '70s came,
Mhm.
and the ACLU, which was
Liberal.
one of the most liberal organizations out there, defends the right of the American Nazis to be American
Mhm.
Nazis. Now, once the Nazis cross the line into actual acts of violence, terror, horror, those are all unlawful, and they cannot advocate and encourage people to commit crimes. But their views are protected speech, even if we find those views to be abhorrent. Larry Flint is a pornographer, and I think pornography is intensely destructive, and I would like to see it regulated, meaning where you can buy it, where you can purchase it, and, all this and that, and have the internet not be the garbage pit that it is.
Mhm.
But still, Larry Flint, the late Larry Flint, and his successors have a right to be pornographers so long as they stay within the limits of what is right.
Yeah.
Now, but the government shouldn't decide what is acceptable.
Well, they do up to the point of child pornography. I mean, that
Yes.
there are limitations to the freedom of press in that regard. We're going to talk now more about Michael Ingram, a retired bishop in Canada who was able to take down the largest church in Canada. Tell me about the good bishop.
He's a piece of work. Michael Ingham is Canada's Jack Spawn. He's a noted author. He's written several books. One of them mentions of the Spirit. He advocates for a multi faith approach to Christianity, that there are many ways to the Father. Jesus just happens to be our way, but it's equally valid to be a Muslim or a Wiccan or whatever. So he's also been on the forefront of the gay movement. His diocese, with his active support, endorsed gay blessings years before anybody else did, and began the unraveling, as Drexel Gomez says, of the fabric of the Anglican Communion. He also initiated the sue conservatives and kick them out of their churches when they fight back defense.
Mm-hmm.
And he engaged in successful lawsuits and drove St. John Shaughnessy out of its buildings. So they've got a beautiful, beautiful, huge building that had 1,000 people in it with 30 or 40 people rattling around, but it belongs to the diocese now because the Canadian courts interpreted Anglicanism in that way.
Now, Bishop Ingram wrote an article in response to the terrorist attacks in France. For those of you who have not been watching TV or cable news for the last 4 weeks, two Muslim men entered the magazine facilities of Charlie Hebdo and killed many of the editors and publishers and artists in there. And they were eventually captured and killed. This led France to the, oh my gosh, what's going on here? We are being overtaken by Islam. There's over panic, there's overreaction. What's the freedom of speech? All these issues are coming up in France and now in Europe. What are we going to do? Well, Michael Ingham has put out an opinion piece. What does he think we should do?
Michael Ingham is totally in favor of free speech as long as he agrees with it. He believes that speech must be protected. We must be allowed to say what we think, so long as it is not offensive. Mm-hmm. If it's offensive speech, then the government should step in and stop people from saying it. That, I think, is absolutely asinine, but hey.
Well, as Christians, I mean, we have to say that's ridiculous because to first century Christianity, when Jesus went up on the mount and gave the Beatitudes was offensive. It was beyond what anybody could. What do you mean? Obviously, the first shall be first. You're absolutely crazy. And the downtrodden will always be the downtrodden, and the rich will always be the rich. What you're saying here is offensive to us. The whole nature of the incarnate person we know as Jesus is offensive. The gospel message is offensive. And
it's offensive to most Episcopalians when we preach in a church on Sunday.
And yes, there is the interdenominational issue of things that go on in tech and the Methodist Church and the congregational churches where you mentioned Jesus and he's just this scholarly guy from the past. There's something that's very offensive about Christianity. And
Jesus is the pajama boy in the sky for a lot of the Episcopal bishops these days. But hey, let's not go there.
So what Bishop Ingham is saying would have stopped Christianity in its tracks many eons ago. And this is why we have so many martyrs in our church, is because they came up against people who were offended by what was being said.
The mindset that Bishop Ingham and people like him have these days is that it's like Al Gore on global warming. The science has spoken. Or we're on the right side of history. Gay marriage is an inevitable just human development that can never be undone. And, forget the fact that we've had these things before, like prohibition, like communism, like eugenics, all these things that, society had reached an absolute conclusion that this is the way things are until we move to the next thing.
I know.
And Michael Ingham is saying that, you cannot be offensive, you cannot give wrong speech if I, Michael Ingham, and my like-minded liberal chattering people believe it to be wrong. And see, that, first off, that stops all progress. Mm-hmm. If you halt conversation because you at a certain point believe it no longer is valid because all the decisions are answered, you're engaged in an intellectual fallacy, and as you have said, you are robbing Christians of their voice to change a fallen and broken world.
Yeah, since 1965, we've heard about the Big Bang Theory. the biggest article in Science News now this week is that there was no Big Bang. They can't find when it started. And so you're just like, oh, all these people who put all their faith in science. Science is more fluid than Christianity has been in the last 2,000 years, and it just drives me crazy, the people who put their faith in it. However, as a person who loves the freedom of speech, I have no trouble with you publishing your articles and all that. But let's move on. Peter Old and I had an episode this week where we talked about Steven Sizer. Reverend Sizer is a person known for probably not posting the most least offensive things on his Facebook. He is certainly pro-Palestinian. Some people have called him anti-Semitic. You and I met him at both GAFCONs. He is who he is, and he's being punished by his bishop for posting anti-Semitic stuff on his Facebook page. You would say he could, should, or would. What are the rights of a clergyman to the bishop or to his responsibility to his parish?
It's a difficult topic because he shouldn't do this,
right,
but he may do this. Now, what am I talking about?
Yeah,
I think his ideas are rubbish. Now, I must admit, I served as a correspondent for the Jerusalem Post for a number of years. I'm philo-Semitic. I'm one of these people whose theology, Steven Sizer says, is an abomination.
Mm-hmm.
But I still believe Steven Sizer should have the right to be wrong, have the right to publish and say things that allow him to express his views, because that's the only way that his views can be combated, as to show them up for being wrong. To silence them by having... I think it's ridiculous when an unnamed official from the Church of England says the Church of England finds Steven Sizer's views offensive. Well, the Church of England is the church that, is so pro-Palestinian. They pass all these anti-Israel resolutions at General Synod.
Yeah.
I had a story that appeared on the front page of the Jerusalem Post a while back where I interviewed George Carey, and George Carey, the former Archbishop of Canterbury, said he was embarrassed to be a member of the Church of England by the recent actions and statements of the General Synod of the Church of England. And now this same organization is turning around and nailing Steven Sizer for being an idiot. Well, yes, Steven Sizer is an idiot. He's saying dumb things, but he still should have the right to be an idiot. And now, if his bishop told him ahead of time, you're not allowed to talk about this, stick your nose into the parish and keep it there, that's one thing. He's a man under discipline, and he must respond to discipline. But I think, Johnson Tom was mouthing off about economics, and the man is as wrong about how the world works as Steven Sizer is wrong about how the Arab-Israeli situation works. Should we ban Johnson Tamu for being a total idiot when it comes to economics and the way society works?
Well, if you're asking the question, yes. I mean, he is so wrong. But no, your point is correct that we should be able to speak freely. However, I do believe that what his bishop did was correct, to hold him accountable. That you are a representative of a parish, you're a representative of my ministry, you're a representative of the Church of England. I therefore say that if you want to remain in that position, you cannot go on Facebook, you cannot associate with these anti-Semitic individuals and organizations. I think he has the ability and right to do it, but he has as a priest, he is also accountable to his bishop and to the Church of England.
Correct. And it's the same thing. As I said, you can lie, but you must suffer the consequences of your slander.
Mm-hmm.
Steven Sizer should have the right to say stupid things, but he must suffer the consequences for saying those stupid things, because he's a man under discipline, under the authority of his bishop. And if his bishop has said, no, don't go there, and he goes there, then he must suffer the consequences. But that is a different issue than the right to, I guess you could say I'm a libertarian on this point.
Apparently. Well, we've done our 15 minutes. Next Friday, we'll talk about the right of Brian Williams to lie on TV. I'm Kevin Carlson.
And I'm George Conger. And you've been watching episode 158. I've got to look it up.
Yes.
Of Anglican Unscripted.
And get your curtains up.
mean, because I'm a natural criminal at heart. Uh,
Yeah.
no, I mean, when kids were little, some kids wanted to be Willie baseball players, Willie Mays, and or some wanted to be super agents like James Bond. I wanted to be Blofeld. I wanted I
Bye.
wanted to have my own Swiss chalet with girls and gadgets. I
Uh-huh.
didn't want to.
George and Bonnie, not Clyde. Huh? Okay, I got
Yeah.
it. All right, sit back a little. You lean a little too far forward. There you go. All right, good. Let's see here. I need to sit a little closer. See, the hardest job I have is hey, keep. I told you get shades. You know.
Well, I'm going to do this sign
Oh,
language.
that's good. You're the sign language person. That's right. Now we talk about Catherine Jefferson Shorey. Horns.